In this video, I'm going to show you one way to achieve what you see here in front of you, where the descending loop of the G and the border that surrounds it appear over top of the swash here in the letter S at the end of the word Eagles. So let's get started. I'm going to turn off that layer. That was the complete layer over here in the layers panel on the right. And I'm going to turn on the line work layer. So I went ahead and created or recreated this word using the pen tool. So the first thing I like to do is create a layer above that, just a copy by bringing this line work layer down over the plus sign and creating a copy. That's kind of the easy way to do it, the beginner way to do it. There are other commands you can do to achieve that. I'm going to lock down my original one, and then I'm going to come into my line work copy layer, and this is the one I'm going to be working on here. Okay, so I've selected that, made sure I'm on that layer, and we will go ahead and start. So we have a number of things going on here. Let me kind of walk you through. The E is separate from every other letter. All the other letters are separate from one another, and you can see that because they overlap. They are enclosed shapes here. I've used the stroke and created it all the way around to trace the shape with the pen tool. Same with this G over here, the L, and the E and the S. So they're all separate from one another. And what we want to do is combine certain parts of that together so that we can begin working on it. We're going to keep the S, very important. We're going to keep the letter S over here. We're going to keep that completely separate throughout the whole thing until the very last steps. And then we'll combine some things here to get what we need. So let's go to the A. Let's select that. I'm holding down the Shift key and selecting the G, the L, and the E. So I've selected all of these letters, and we're going to combine them using the Pathfinder tool, or Pathfinder panel rather. So we come up to Window and we go down to Pathfinder, and that's going to bring up this panel over here. The one we're concerned with is shape modes. The very first one that says Unite, we're going to click on that. So these little buttons here affect the shapes in certain ways using Pathfinder. So let's click Unite, and you can see that things have now been combined. There's no more overlap in the middle here between these letters. So now these are one shape. And what we'll do is we will keep it selected, and I'm going to come in here to the stroke, and I'm going to change my stroke color. So you don't have to do this, but it's just easier to see sometimes. Let's go with this like blue color so you can see the difference now. So these are now combined, and we're going to come over to the tool panel here on the left. These are for the tools. Come down to this little double arrow here, and we're going to swap the fill and the stroke. So our stroke is now blue. We'll click that, and now our fill is blue. And you can see that we have the lines still for the space inside of the letters, but they're not visible here. So that just has to do with stacking of things. We had a number of shapes. We combined them together, each in different order in what's called a stacking order within the layer. We can see that if we come over to the line work copy layer in the layers panel, and you kind of twirl this down, this little caret here, you can see all of the pieces that make up this particular layer. We don't have to worry about that so much, so we'll twirl that back up. Really, all we have to do is send this blue shape to the back. So we're going to come up to Object, go down to Arrange, and Send to Back. So the Object menu, down to Arrange, Send to Back, and now we can see all of the lines inside of the letters. So these are called the counters of the letters, the interior space. We're going to take those and we're going to deal with them a little bit differently. We're going to select all of these. Whoops. Sorry about that. We're going to select these individually, doing the same thing we did before. So it's kind of hard to see, but they are selected. We can see the little point here. They are selected. Let's go ahead and swap the fill and stroke color. So we got that one. Let's get this one down here. We're going to, again, swap fill and stroke by hitting that double arrow. And now we have the interior parts selected. So let's select the E. We haven't done anything with the E. Let's take the eyedropper tool over here in the Tools panel. And let's select that, and then we're just going to sample any one of these blue letters. This shape here, and that's going to turn it into blue. So it's now filled just like these other ones. Let's now take the S, and just so that we understand things a little bit better while we're working on it, let's swap the fill, and now we can't see the swap the stroke with the fill, and now we can't see the interior. So let's just change that really quickly. We're going to double click on the fill color, and I'm just going to pick anything else. It doesn't really matter. Maybe we'll pick something that contrasts pretty well. Let's do this green. And we're going to do the exact same thing that we did before. So select the interior part, swap fill and stroke. Okay, so we see the S, and the swash of the S is now in front of the G. What we can do now is select the S. Let's just select that completely. You got that selected, and we're going to do the same thing we did before. Object, transform, actually arrange, send to back. So object, arrange, send to back. That's going to send everything to back, and now you can see everything kind of as just shapes in different colors, so we can better understand how things are set up. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to select this line work copy layer, make another layer, because I'm kind of tracking my progress here. And now we're working on line work copy 2. Let me double click on that. I'll just rename it to working. So these ones that you see below, these are just so that we can return if we mess up along the way. So we are still working on the working layer now. So the next step, what we're going to do now is we are going to select everything. I'm just going to drag around it with my selection tool, and we have everything selected now. Okay. In fact, let me back up a little bit. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to select everything that's red and blue. So let's just go like this. We'll select around it. We want to make sure we don't touch the S in any way. So everything that is selected in the word just eagle. No S, no swash, nothing. We just see that by this box that's around it. Okay, now we're going to use a pretty exciting tool for dealing with these shapes inside. We're going to knock those out so that they are essentially transparent. We can just see right through them. They're holes in the letters. So let's go over to the Shape Builder tool in the Tools panel. It's the white arrow with 2 circles and dots in it. And we're going to select that while everything is still selected. Very important that everything is still selected that you want to affect. That includes the blue and the red. And while we hover over, you can see our cursor kind of changes to this plus sign, plus sign. We get a plus sign over top of it. That's if we want to add things. If we wanted to pull these two together, we could do that by just dragging through both of them, and it would combine them, either red or blue. It would just combine them into one shape, kind of like what we did with the Pathfinder panel. But what we're going to do is hold down our Option key, that's Alt on Windows, and it's going to shift our cursor, probably can't see it too well, from a plus sign to a minus sign. And we're telling it to delete what's inside. Now that cursor, as you move it around, it kind of disappears. So just hit that Option key or Alt, click in those areas that you want to remove. I'm going around and just hovering over top of them, Option key held down, Alt key held down, and then clicking. And that will remove the interiors, the counters of the letters. Let's do that also with the S over here. Let's select the S and the red shape, so the green and red are selected. And let's grab that Shape Builder tool, hold down the Option key, and click. So Option on the Mac and Alt on Windows. Okay, so we're getting pretty close now. We're going to keep everything separate. Next, we will make everything, let's just take it to gray. It doesn't really matter at this time. I just want to leave it this way. I think I'm going to do gray just so we can see the final stage is how we turn it to black. Let's go ahead and take the S and make that maybe a different gray level just so you can see. Okay, so they're different right now. So now what we'll do is we will select all of these letters, these particular ones, and we could combine them using Command 8. That is the same thing as under the object menu, creating a compound path. So it's probably a wise thing to do first. So we're going to go to compound path make, which is Command 8, Control 8 on Windows. Okay, and what did that do? Well, if you open up your appearance panel, you can go up to Window and go down to Appearance. That's going to bring up this panel here. I'm going to undock that from my panels dock over here, just so we can see. We have a number of different options in here. Let's do the same thing with the S. It looks like the S is already a compound path. Okay. So this is where we want it. We want it to be a compound path in this panel. If it says group or just path, it may still work, and it may still work with just path, but we're going to keep it as a compound path while we're working on it. Okay. So we have this thing. It's kind of like the layers panel. You have to think of it as layers. I typically will create a new stroke just by coming down here and adding a new stroke. You don't have to do that. You can just take the one that has no stroke here, and you can drag it down below the fill. See this little blue line as you drag it? It's changing the stacking order, the visibility in the stacking of things. When I say stacking, it's just kind of like layers of paper on top of one another. So we're just changing the order. We're making the stroke lower. Where this little red line is coming through, we're going to change that in a second. We're going to click on it, and then we are going to click on this little caret off to the side, and this is where our panel comes up with all of our colors. I'm going to pick this gold color because that's the color that we're going to be ending up with. So I have this gold color. And then what I will do is increase the stroke. Now you can see it kind of building off of the edge of the letterforms. And that is because we have this stroke behind the fill, we get that effect. If we pull it in front, you can see it's actually building the stroke, half of the stroke really. It's building it kind of out of that letter form. But it doesn't look so great. You can see that kind of makes things look a little weird and wonky. So let's drag that back down in the stacking order. Put that there. Okay, good. So we got that ready to go. Now, what we'll do is we will create, because we don't want to really have to repeat that over and over and over again, we're going to create from this, we're going to create what is called a graphic style. So yeah, this video is a little bit longer because I'm teaching you a couple of techniques in one thing that hopefully will help. So let's first change the stroke here. I'm going to click on this little underline, the word stroke. That'll bring up the stroke panel. I'm just going to change it to round cap and round join, just so that the interior parts and where things meet, they're a little more soft and curved. I just find that to be better sometimes. It's really up to you. So we can come in, let's close the appearance panel. Let's just kind of redock that over here again. I'll put it right in there. And I'm going to now open up the graphic styles panel. So let's pull that off to the side. And you can see I've actually already created the graphic style here. To create a graphic style, you simply take the shape that has been affected and you drag it into that panel until you see, on a Mac at least, a green dot, a green circle with a white plus sign, and you just let go in there. So you've created a graphic style, and we're going to use that graphic style to easily apply what is done here to the word eagle over here. So all we have to do is click on the graphic style. And you can see now that we have done the exact same thing with the S. We don't have to go through all the other steps again. Let me pull that back over there. So we've got everything ready to go. You can, at this point, make another layer, another copy layer. I'm not going to do that at this time. So I'm going to select all of my shapes. That means the S and the word eagle. Everything is ready to go. And we could just stop here, but the problem is we have the E overlapping the S. If we join these together right now, it's just going to pull all of these shapes together. And we don't want that. We want them to be the G to sit over top of the S, this loop. So here's what we can do. We can select all of our shapes, just dragging around them, and we can come up to Object, Expand Appearance. So you may have to do this a couple of times. And we do that, and if we come into the Appearance panel, we've lost all of those things, so you might want to make sure that you do make a copy, just so you can get back and work on it in the Appearance panel. Maybe you wanted the border to be thicker or thinner. You could go ahead and do that if you haven't already done this. So let's do Command Z. I'm going to come back and make a copy of my working layer. I'm going to hide it. And now I'm working on working copy layer. So multiple layers, multiple steps saved. And we can see if we go into Appearance panel, we have Compound Path Graphic Style 2. It even tells you what graphic style has been applied. Okay. So now let's go back and do what we were doing. Let's select everything. Let's go to Object, Expand Appearance. And we can see over here in the Appearance panel, we now have a group. Let's do it again. Sometimes it's just good to do it a couple times. We need to first expand the appearance, and then we're going to expand the fill and the stroke. So let's see what happens. Okay, so we got a number of shapes here. We first expanded the appearance, and now we've expanded the stroke and the fill. Okay, so if you don't get this part of it, maybe you didn't do the graphic style. That's why I'm showing you all the steps, because this works for me every time. But you may have to expand it several times, and then you may even have to go into Path, Outline, Stroke, because there's strokes left over. But because I made the graphic style down here, I can go ahead and continue on. So now what do we have? We have a number of just shapes that are overlapping. We have gray shapes. If we come into the Direct Selection tool, we have gray shapes, and we have orange shapes. They are separate. The gray is sitting over top of the orange. Okay, so here's the last part of this before we colorize eagles from gray to black. We are going to come in and get our selection tool. We're going to select around everything. And now we have everything selected. And it can get kind of confusing because there's multiple paths that are being shown here after we made the outlines, or we went ahead and expanded things. That's what happened. But let's go in to this area right here, because this is the area that we're concerned with most. We want to make it look like these are combined. And if you zoom in, you can see there's a number of shapes that we need to combine. So how do we do this? Well, you could go into the Shape Builder tool again over here in the Tools panel, the one with the white circle in, or the two circles in the white arrow. And if you hover over these areas, you can see that it's individually selecting these. Now it can get kind of confusing, so what you want to do is you really just want to affect the gray. So we're going to take this area, this part right here that's overlapping the orange, and we're going to individually excuse me, select those. We're going to click on them. So we're just going to click because we have gray selected already. I want to make sure that color is gray, by the way, in this case. And we're just going to click the areas, kind of like a paint bucket, filling those. Now we have the orange in here. So what we can do is we can select the orange. Let's go into our swatches panel, and we have that orange right here. But before we do that, because if we start selecting all these things, we just want to make sure it's the right orange. And because I already selected that from this panel, I can go ahead and do it here. So I have selected the correct orange. I'm going to zoom in. I still have the shape builder tool, and I'm just going to fill these areas with orange. Okay, so does that look right? Let's take a look. Let's deselect, and we can see that. Now that doesn't look right. So we still have a few more steps that we have to go through. In fact, what we need to do is kind of go back and figure out what we did here. Let's go in, zoom in on this, and we can see that actually this whole area right here needs to be gray, right in here. So let's get our gray color. If we use our eyedropper, everything turns gray. We don't want to do that. We want to go into our shape builder tool. We want to come back to our swatches. We want to select that gray, which is already selected. And we want to just click on these orange areas, this kind of bridge between the letters. We have even a little area in here. Let me show you something really quickly. You can drag through that. If you just drag like you're drawing with the pencil, it will combine them. So we could do that here too. And now we've combined it. And this is why it's called the Shape Builder tool, because we can build shapes just by using this tool. Let's deselect. And now we can see that our letters are combined. Now we could just leave it here, not a problem. We could just go ahead and colorize all of this gray, and we could colorize all of the orange, which is already that way. We're going to leave it that way, but we could do that. But an easier way to deal with the color down the road, if we have to come back and colorize this again, is to just take our direct selection tool, select one of the shapes, doesn't matter what it is, select in the select menu, go up to select and then same fill color, and now we have all of the same fill colors selected, and we can come into our Pathfinder panel and unite, and we can see that that's caused a little bit of an issue here, hasn't it? So undo add. Let's do it first with the orange. So let's select all of the orange. Same fill color. We can see all of the orange selected there. So what's happening here? Let's see. Let's try that. Did that work? Well, it did work, but look what happened with the S. It got beefier here. So this is where people tend to say, oh no, what's going on here? At least I used to pull my hair out with this one. But since I deal with logos mainly, I can go to edit, undo, add. I've learned to actually incorporate this method before doing this. So let's select all first. We're going to select all of this, and you can see it's a mess of different paths everywhere. Okay, if you ever want to hide that, it's just Command H. Command H toggles the paths. So sometimes it can get kind of confusing while you're working. Command H will deal with that. Let's select all again. And one thing that we can do is go into the Pathfinder, very important, come down here to below Unite to divide. Now you're thinking, why are we dividing this? This is very strange. We're just going to separate all of these like little puzzle pieces. All of the overlaps and all of the shapes, everything will be separated at those overlaps where they intersect. And it's not going to look any different. You're going to look at it and say, oh, well, there's no difference. But watch now what we can do. Let's go into our direct selection tool. Let's select the gray, any area of gray. It's all shapes now. Select same fill color. And we're doing the same thing we did before. But this time when we go into Pathfinder and we click on Unite, you can see it just takes all of the gray and combines it. And it's really just creating a compound path. Let's go into the orange. These are all separate still. We can see they're separate shapes. Look at those shapes. That one's separate from this. We want to make sure that when we select orange, it selects everything. So let's do the same thing. Select same, fill color, and then we click to unite. So we can come back into Pathfinder, click to unite. And that's really our last step. And what's great about it is if you select just the gray, we got it grouped right now, I believe. Let's look in appearance. Yep, we got it grouped. But if you select just the gray, let's just go into the direct selection tool. Let's do select same fill color to select all of the gray. You can change it to now black or whatever color you want. You can also come in here. I just like to keep things separate here. Select same fill color. And let's just make that green. Let's do a lighter green like that. So you can see that the green or the two colors are separate now. Now what I like to do also here, let's just ungroup it. So we're going to take it like this, and then we're going to just ungroup. And then you're not going to see anything, but now when you select it, you can select the individual colors. So now you have their outline again. You could actually work on that outline. Because it's a shape, you could actually just leave it that way. But that's why it's important to save your steps as you go. So you can go back if you ever needed to. Let's just say we messed up severely and we needed to get back to the beginning. There's our line work. Maybe we only made it to this point. We were fine with it, but we needed to do something here. Here's our working. Maybe we wanted to adjust again in the appearance panel. Maybe we thought things were a little too thick. We could go into the appearance panel. We could take our stroke and make it thinner. We could do that. So saving your steps along the way really does help. So if you mess up along the way, you can go back. So let's do Command Z several times. It's just going to go back through all of my selections here. And there. So that's really how you do that. I know it's a really long video, but if you watch each of these steps and walk through it, it can really help you. It can help you now, and then once you learn the technique, you can use it down the road. So, several techniques that I've found helpful.